All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Kembali 2020, a Rebuild Bali Festival, a digital program designed to inspire, excite, reconnect, and revitalize the Balinese and Indonesian community that is starting from 29th of October till the 8th of November. Kembali, which is the Indonesian word for return or come back, represents revitalization in the face of global challenges. The festival will unite people in Bali and Indonesia together with an international audience at a time when travel is largely impossible and creating connection is more important than ever before. Quickly introducing, my name is Kintan, and I'm very, very excited to be your moderator in this talk. Hip hop is my passport. Welcome, everyone. Sitting with me from the land down under, Morganics, an award winning hip hop artist, poet, and community worker based in Cairns, Australia. Morganics has performed internationally from New York to Tanzania, and he also works around Australian on community educational hip hop projects. He basically a man with many, many talents. He has released an album called For My Friends and My Enemies, and also a feature film called Survival Tactics. And more importantly, we are here right now to talk about his hip hop journey in his upcoming book, Hip Hop is My Passport. Hello, good afternoon, Morgan.
Selamat pagi, apa kabar? Thank you very much, Makasi. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure. Thanks, Kinta.
That's awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much. I already read a couple of your chapters of your book, and your journey, your story of your journey is very, very interesting. Especially you're using your gift of hip hop and rapping to connect with various people in literally any part of the world, right? But I want to start with the basic questions. What makes you start into hip hop?
I guess like most people, I'm just a person of my generation and my time. So when I was an 11-year-old boy in Sydney, our TVs, time before the internet, were bombarded with this new type of music, which was coming out of America, and there was dancing as part of it. And we used to call it rap dancing. And at the age of 11, I made this little thing. There you go. The original boombox I made from bits of coffee lids and jars and things stuck on, and I just put it all together. And back in the day, we used to play cassettes, of course.
And that literally works if you put cassette on it?
Not right now. No, it's a little bit past that time, but I've salvaged it. And I used to take this little down to the city and a roll of linoleum, and I would put this down and I'd put on music like Michael Jackson and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and I had a little costume which I got together. I bought some white gloves from a chemist shop, and I had a special pair of Nike shoes and special outfit. There were no hip hop labels then. You just had to make up your own thing. And I would busk. I would perform on the street for money, and I'd do little routines. I'd done a little bit of mime in my theatre, and so I used some of my mime skills and used my little boombox here, and I started breakdancing. I was what we call a b-boy or a breakdancer. So that's how I got into it when I was very young, and pretty much everyone was into it. It was massive in Australia, and I've come to learn that it was, of course, massive all around the world. I've been lucky enough to meet b-boys from Manila to Jakarta to New York.
It's very fascinating. You mentioned as well the thing that intrigued me. There is in your bio, it says Australian hip hop. How is it, like, what is it different? Because like, as for me, someone who is not in the hip hop scene, I think hip hop is just this hip hop, So can you elaborate, like, what's Australian hip hop? How is it different?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to. It's a really good question. Thank you. Of course, if you have hip hop in Indonesia, it's going to be in Bahasa, and you can have all the slang and all the things and the references, cultural, historical senses of identity, the public discourse, the issues which are going on within Indonesia, which are many and diverse. People in Aceh are going to be rapping differently and about different things to people in Denpasar. It's very much the same here in Australia. Of course, like we speak, I don't speak with an American accent, so I don't rap with an American accent. And the things that I will talk about will be things which are just relevant to me personally, but also on a local and national level, I guess, in sense of my identity and worldview. But I'd quote an English rapper called Ty, who I was lucky enough to work with, and who was sadly missed. He was taken by COVID not too long ago in England, but I was lucky enough to work with him. And he was an English MC of Nigerian background. And I spoke to him about, look, you have worked with some of the biggest artists in America, De La Soul and people like that. How did you find it as a UK hip hop artist working with them? And he said to me, I'm not a UK hip hop artist. I'm a hip hop artist in the UK. God. So his whole identity is not nationalistic. His identity is actually more hip hop. And I guess for me, that is part of how I take it too. For example, I don't say, "G'day, mate, when I rap upon the mic, looking for a crocodile, drinking on a beer." I don't do that, you know.
Very good, by the way.
Yes, I don't do Crocodile Dundee raps, you know. So that can be fun, but Australian hip hop is always emerging and changing, and it's different for every Australian, as it would be different for every Indonesian or Malaysian or Thai hip hop artist. Yeah.
And you said it's constantly changing. How is it evolving from from you start until right now? How you see it evolving?
When I started out, which is a very long time ago, in 1984, there was no internet, and also there was actually hardly any Australian hip hop artists, so we didn't hear people rapping in an Australian accent. Now, conversely, and probably an important element to frame the whole discussion, is that, of course, hip hop isn't just rapping. It's, you know, it's b-boying, it's b-girling, it's dancing, it's beatboxing, it's graffiti, and it's DJing. And Australia has always been really strong, particularly here with b-boying and b-girling and graffiti. And I've always been very inspired and continue to be very inspired by those elements of the hip hop culture. But in terms of the music in Australia, it's gotten more visible, it's gotten bigger. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily caught up to places like Malaysia, who have had crews like Too Fat, who have been very big for a long time over there. I'd say in a global context, the acceptance of hip hop in Australia has been very slow and low, but in recent years, it's gotten bigger and more. And I think there's been a really healthy focus on Indigenous hip hop in Australia, which I've been lucky to be a part of, and to see that boom as well is incredible and pivotal for our sense of identity, I think. Yeah.
It's very interesting to hear about the Aboriginal hip hop. I will get to that later. But yeah, you know, like while reading the chapters of your book, I'm amazed how, you know, like how you can connect with various types of communities around the world with hip hop. But I'm curious, can you tell us the aha moment when you realize you can empower community through hip hop?
Oh, okay. Yeah, good question. I'd actually have a pretty clear sense of it. Was 1997, so 23 years ago. I'd been in I was in a what we would call a second generation Australian hip hop crew called Meta Bass and Breath. And we had been asked to go down to Redfern, which is inner city Sydney, and which is, particularly at that stage, was a predominantly Aboriginal Koori community. And we were asked to run some workshops at the Koori, at the community centre there in Redfern with young Aboriginal kids. And I came into that hall, and there was a few of us working together, and it was just abundantly clear that these young people from 6 years old to 16 at that stage felt such a strong connection to hip hop and were so keen and excited to learn different elements, from the breakdancing to the beatboxing to the DJ to the music production to the graffiti, because we had a group of people teaching together, men and women. And they were just so hungry and so keen. It re-energized me as a hip hop artist, and it really excited me. And from there, I really started doing I just fell into doing a lot of community work. And there was a stage where I really didn't have a home for about 10 years, where I would just travel around Australia, and luckily sometimes overseas. But I worked a lot with Aboriginal communities, spending a lot of time in very, very far away places, which blew my mind. It was just a real privilege. But that was the aha moment.
This is very, very nice.
Yeah, that was
great. And yesterday I saw your video clip, the video, and it's very fun. I think we should play the video right now so the audience who watch right now can understand the fun that I mentioned. Yeah, can we play the video?
From the center of the empire to where it ends, rebel outpost, bring hope, the truth is rare. Like the t-shirt the DJ Premier wears. Hip-hop isn't on the radio. I trekked around the globe and I found it though. Morganics on the mic, here to let you know. Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go. Come on.
Hip-hop isn't on the radio. Hip-hop isn't on the radio.
Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go. B-boyed and MC'd on the streets of Tokyo. Threw down with the mad B-boys down to Rio. Beatbox with the Maasai in Africa. Her poems of freedom from the land of Kenya. Share the stage with the brothers in the UK. To the hip-hop workshop at the beginning of the day. At the Queen's High School for a whole damn week. Drove around to Warren on a land in a jeep full of kids playing songs that we made together. Got a song of freshest kids. If you remember, made a bass back in the day. Touring in Toronto's, driving through the night, planting seeds we sow. The fruits of our labor ain't bling. You will sing cause we gotta make it harder. Bring a heart to the fire in the world that conspires. Never retire, leave a mark like a tire when I burn it out. But I never burn out cause I'm always on the simmer. I'm always on the simmer. With a megapixel pen from the center of the empire to where it ends. Rebel outpost, bring hope, the truth is rare. Like the t-shirt the DJ Premier wears. Hip-hop isn't on the radio. I trekked around the globe and I found it though. Morganics on the mic, here to let you know. Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go. Come on.
Hip-hop isn't on the radio. Hip-hop isn't on the radio.
Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go.
Hip-hop isn't on the radio. Hip-hop isn't on the radio.
Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go. I'm here to create and innovate, take it to another space, never lock it down underground by the waves. I'm over the sky, interplanetary, hip-hop purists scare me. Mix it up, keep it fresh, never rest, contemplate, debate. I got a thirst, it's I can't say. Illuminate, style, illuminate, never too late. Cause old school, gotta learn not to hate. Celebrate where you're from, stay strong, carry on, define your own vision. Don't smoke too much weed, don't do it for the greed. Lyricism, not nutrition, gotta give them what they need. No more blood for all, let the refugees in. You talking about hoes while people are bleeding. fix the pain from the center of the empire to where it ends. Rebel outpost, bring hope, the truth is rare. Like the t-shirt the DJ Premier wears. Hip-hop isn't on the radio. I trekked around the globe and I found it though. Morganics on the mic, here to let you know. Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go. Come on.
Hip hop isn't on the radio. Hip hop isn't on the radio.
Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go.
Hip hop isn't on the radio. Hip hop isn't on the radio.
Move your body to the beat, everybody, let's go.
Hip hop isn't on the radio. Hip hop isn't on the radio. Ooh, hip hop isn't on the radio. Hip hop isn't on the radio.
Ooh, I wish we were in the same room, and then so like everyone claps, thousand people clap. That's amazing. That's great. That's great. It's
Thank
so interesting to see, like, in one clip, you can see like so many different cultures, you know, like the big city and then like the very Japanese Japan, you know, and then like I can see like some of the, I think Tanzania, as mentioned in your book. I like, how do you approach them? Because it's so many different characteristic of community. Yeah, like how do you engage in the beginning? How do you approach them?
Oh, well, one thing I just want to give a shout out. The end of the clip was shot in Ubud, and I was there for the I was there for the festival. So there's footage of performing at the old Jazz Cafe, which is no longer there.
Yeah,
Now,
good
it's at a pro wholeness, mindfulness place. No more jazz.
Oh, yeah.
And the popping or locking was at the fantastic Ubud Library for a bunch of local school kids there. So, and Jeanette was kind enough to hook me up through the festival and recorded songs with some kids at kindergarten, like a childcare. We did little songs. They did the sounds of different animals, and we recorded that little song there in Ubud. I went down to the international school in Denpasar, and I worked with young students there. And they were, of course, from a variety of backgrounds. You know, I became aware of the Brazilian football connection to Bali. And so I was working with the children of, you know, Brazilian soccer players and Americans and Canadians and French. So, of course, we made a little song which was multilingual, a bunch of languages. So I guess wherever I would work, your main job is to be open and listen and try and understand a degree of who you're with, where you are, what languages they speak, and what sounds are affecting them. You don't want to just do like a copy of what's in the top, you know, the top charts that week, which some people will do. I'm more interested in trying to create something which is really reflective of the people and the culture and, you know, maybe even the history and the sounds and the textures and the feelings, the politics of each area. I think it's so much richer if you go with that. Like in the Hip Hop Is My Passport, the main sample is from koto, the beautiful Japanese classical instrument. And I got that sample when I was in Kyoto from a CD that I bought there. And then there was bits of Brazilian percussion samples that I'd collected when I'd been in Brazil. So, you know, there's so much richness, and hip hop has always been a culture which samples and uses little elements of other cultures, whether it's funk, jazz, Latin music, you name it, and they will repurpose it to make it a hip hop thing. So you can do that with any community, I find, which is what's exciting about the form.
Wow, yeah, so it's kind of like one way, it's like a very versatile way. You have like this one basic way, but then what matter is about like the elements that you get from each community. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. It's about being open, being aware, doing some research, having good guides and connections where you are, and good conversations with people. And so if I'm in Tanzania, I'll be saying, play me the local music which is going on, which is bongo flavor. Okay, play me some traditional music. Okay, now I'm going to play some of the hip hop that I'm influenced by. And then I will discuss with the young men, they were all ex-street kids that we worked together, and said, how are we going to bring these different elements together to create something new, to create something which is reflective of them and me collaborating. And you I think that's the exciting thing about it. It can keep reinventing itself. It shouldn't fall into, I don't know, cliches or stereotypes. It's actually a lot more, hip hop is quite interplanetary in nature, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, you can really travel the universe with hip hop because you can collaborate with a classical musician or a gamelan group. I jammed with the Wayang Kulit group in near Ubud, and they were doing a bit of ketchek dance, and you know, jam together all the beautiful, amazing dancing you have for Ramayana and all that in Ubud, of course, inspired me with my popping, and there's connections there. So there's a lot of connections to be made.
That's cool. And I assume everyone is being open about it, right? Like the communities. Do you have ever any like pushback experience where probably like a community is, you know, like something like, oh, what is this? Like this guy is like coming in, interfering my day-to-day music or culture works. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so it's a really, really good question. I think coming down to generally always trying to tread softly and be sensitive and do research and have good guides when you enter into any community that can help avoid that situation. However, within that context, I have had the experience a few times with Aboriginal elders, so respected older people in the Aboriginal communities, just in a couple where I've gone in and they've said to me, we don't want that American music. We want our young people to do their own type of music. And we don't want to be, you know, I guess, invaded by American music. So then in that context, I just have to sit and listen and then play them some examples of other songs that I may have recorded with other Aboriginal communities where they'll be rapping, you know, kuchu, kuchara, kulila, palia. They'll be rapping in Pitjantjatjara. They'll be rapping in Aranta. They'll be rapping in, you know, Yidinji. And they will then be able to see that and go, oh, right, they're actually using their language. And they're actually talking about going fishing, they're talking about hunting, they're talking about culture, they're talking about language, because that's what I will generally push towards is, you know, realistic and positive cultural representation, not mimicry of mainstream Americana, for example. And once they see that, then they'll go, oh, okay, cool, that's all right. And then you take it slowly and you record. And I say, look, I'm going to record with the young people. You can come to the workshops, and sometimes the elders themselves will actually come down and record with me. They might even record a traditional song over the top, or, you know. And then I will bring that song and I'll say, look, nothing's going to go out until you approve it. It has to be approved by you. So those sort of cultural protocols are very important, I think, when you work with any community.
Yeah. Not to all of a sudden interfere and then do whatever the hell you want. But yeah, to listen and to really respect the boundaries that is there, and then understanding where they come from. That's very great. I'm glad that it's not glad, but it's very interesting to hear that it's not always rainbow. That you have this story.
Yeah, I've worked a lot in jails. I've worked a lot in juvenile jails and adult jails. And the thing which I will come up with against in those settings is that they may want to write a song about going to the house of the judge that sentenced them and shooting them when they get out of the house. And so that's where I have to say, no, we're not going to record that.
Right.
You know, and, you know, you may have these young men who may want to come up with some very misogynistic, homophobic raps with American accents. And I have a general rule that we're not going to do anything misogynistic, homophobic, racist, no fake American accents, and no propagation of violence. And the guys will be like, oh man, but that's not real. We want to keep it real. And I'm like, well, you're not going to do that with me. I'm here to do something a bit more positive with you. You can do that another time if you want, but I'm not going to have any part of it. So you have to draw your own lines as well. And that's important for me because sometimes you work with these young fellas and then a couple of years later, they actually come good and they're doing all right, you know, and they start to change their headspace and move out of such a, you know, a violent sort of lifestyle. So you push towards the positive. But sometimes you got to be, as they say, bad cop, you know, you got to be, no way, not going to do that.
Yeah. It's intriguing for me because, you know, this people in the jail, they think like, oh, they can do whatever, you know, write the message and that they in their head, which is not positive. Do you think there is some sort of influence that is in, allow me to say, mainstream hip hop that, you know, they rap all this stuff like money or like, you know, women and stuff like that? Is it do you think they have the thought or inspired by that?
Yeah, I think these days around the world that I've found that go back 15 years, all the influences that I came across were mainstream American. Now there's enough layers within each local industry. So like if I'm working in Czechoslovakia, they're going to be influenced by their local Czech rappers, or in Holland or wherever it is, they will have their influence of their local rappers. Same in Australia now. So when I work with guys in juvenile jail or at-risk youth here, they're actually often influenced by local rappers here, which doesn't mean that they're necessarily great either. And I just have to tread through, I mean, not to say great, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily sending a totally positive message. And, you know, it's a balance. It's a constant balance. And you always got to negotiate it so that it is a question of, you know, am I censoring? And in some senses, yeah, I do just say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to cross over those lines. And it's a constant negotiation and it's always changing. I don't think that mainstream American hip hop has been really good in terms of social commentary, except for that guy Macklemore and Public Enemy and people like that.
Right.
But generally the stuff you're seeing is over-sexualized, it's materialistic, it's simple, it's not even really good music, you know. So I'm not inspired by that. And some of them are, and it's a bit of a way up, always a negotiation. Yeah.
I'm curious when you said, you know, like these people is inspired by their local hip hop or rapper scene. And I assume, and my understanding, like this is happening in like, you know, like the areas where it's like, oh, like city, for example, like big cities. Is there like, if we're talking about, say, you go to like you meet like go to Africa and then there's a chapter of like Tanzania, or meeting like the tribes, what is their social message there, or like what is the style usually when you collaborate with them? And then
what is the style of the existing artists or the artists that I work with?
Sorry, let me rephrase. What do this? So the people who you work with, say like, people in Tanzania, and say like in the Aboriginal community, what do they inspired by? Because I assume like maybe they have like different exposure of things. Maybe their exposure towards this mainstream hip hop is on different level with the people in other areas, for example. Yeah.
Sure. That's a big question. I think with each person, it's really different. You've got what's that guy? Is his name Rich Bill? There's a rapper. He's Indonesian. He raps in English.
Brian.
Ryan. Yeah, Rich Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now he raps in a fully American accent in English, the tracks that I've heard. But I've seen a couple of his clips, which there's one which looked like it was shot in Jakarta. And man, it was awesome. Fantastic. Local young people gathering out, families, intergenerational, cultural representation, good representation of women, loving it. Great. Fantastic. At the same time, I'm sure he's just one, and he's a big artist who's being promoted internationally. Yeah. Underneath him, there'll be layers and layers and levels of artists, because hip hop is really the global cultural form of the last 30 to 40 years, which has shifted elections, in a number of countries. The younger new generation of politicians have used hip hop songs, local hip hop songs, from Eastern Europe to Africa, to capture the younger generation of people. Countries like the Philippines, where the majority of people are under the age of 30. Hip hop has been massive there forever. The Black Eyed Peas, Apple Diap is from the Philippines, So there's going to be layers upon layers, from commercial to underground. And that's always changing. And the internet is a massive changer with that. So if I go to the desert, what we call the desert now, they will often be watching in an Aboriginal community videos of other Aboriginal communities, not only songs that have been done in their community, but nearby communities who might be speaking different languages. And then they might be watching some videos from Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, and then maybe some American stuff as well. So the access, which I think we all have, is enormous, but there's so much hip hop out there now that there is much more grassroots local representation in all the variety of languages and slangs and terms and cultural references that there needs to be, which is great.
Yeah.
And the messages from, getting to your question, a bit more, then the messages that come from different people is really as personal as each person. But I will say that the Wayahudi family in Tanzania, those guys did a party song. They did a breakup song. They did a political song. They did a song about the homeless, because they were like street kids. So I was like, that's so mature. They're hitting so many different topics. And I think that's really healthy, when people go from the personal to the political and not just get stuck in just one,
Yeah.
So up to the artist,
Yeah. Where can we listen to this hip hop songs that you and your the communities that you meet on? Is it up on the internet, or where can we access it?
Well, I guess you can see a bunch of the community clips that I have done with, Aboriginal communities in Tanzania and different places on my website, morganics.info. That will link you to YouTube. From that, you can probably just spread out and link out. But one thing I would recommend to anyone, if you want to find out, because I've worked with children, young people, teenagers who are recent refugees in Australia. So working with Afghan community, Sudanese community, stuff like that. And so before I go to work with them, I just go into YouTube and I type in South Sudanese Dinka hip hop.
Okay.
I want to type up Ubud hip hop. Well, I'm going to get Michael Franti, aren't I? But this guy's because he's there and doing his thing. But you're going to have local Ubud hip hop. You're going to have Denpasar hip hop, and I'll be able to type in Denpasar hip hop. I can go anywhere in the world. Just type in where you're interested. Finnish hip hop. Yep. Swedish, anywhere, Malaysian, anywhere. And then you can go to the city, just type it in, the city and hip hop, and it'll be there on hip hop, I guarantee, on YouTube, I guarantee you.
All right. I'm going to try that after this to see.
You could lose a day or two doing that one. There's a lot.
Don't find me, anyone. That's what I'm going. All right.
I'll be back.
I'll be back. Yes. So like when I read your book again, there's this chapter that in Tanzania that I feel that the family that you interact is hungry, as you said, hungry and very passionate about creating this type of art. Can you tell us more about it? Maybe like if you can do a reading about it, about the Tanzania chapter, I think there will be.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. I do have, I've got, it's a sort of slightly shortened chapter for this of my experience when I went to Tanzania. Is that cool?
Yeah, totally.
I'll reach out of the screen here and look down to my little laptop, because it hasn't been published yet. It's just published on my book, on my laptop. But hopefully you can hear me fine. And this was my experience of when I went to Tanzania. I step onto the tarmac and the heat hits me. The sense of space, the size of the sky, the warmth of the air. After Europe, it feels like I'm back in Australia. In the rich red and orange fading colours of the African sunset, we walk across the runway to the small building that is Kilimanjaro Airport. Trundling through immigration and customs, I am inadvertently covered with litres of mosquito repellent that the expensive action clothing wearing European hordes are spraying onto themselves. I step through to the other side and I see a group of 5 people, 4 Tanzanian guys and a white woman calling out, "Welcome, Morganics, welcome to Tanzania." They're jumping up and down and dancing on the spot, and I'm overwhelmed. I don't normally get welcome like this when I arrive at airports in Australia. Donna, an Australian midwife who's now running the charity that works with ex-street kids here, is my contact. She introduces herself and the guys in a blur of movement. This is the Wayahudi family. That's the name of their group. There's Nico, Frankie, my husband, Naz. They grab my luggage, give me a Wayahudi family t-shirt, and then as we walk to the car, Maxwell says in a deep, earnest voice, "Morganics, I have 52 songs memorized. We are ready to record the album." We pile into the Jeep, hit the road, and the warm air blows in through the windows. The energy is wild. They're so excited, and thankfully their English is a lot better than my Swahili. As the sun dips to render the surrounds only as a vast inky silhouette, I start beatboxing. Nico starts rhyming in Swahili. Mambo, boa, boa, VP, toca freshi. It seems like he's freestyling and I'm impressed. Not to be outdone, Frankie jumps in with a written verse and then Maxwell bursts into song and whoo, that guy can sing. Fingers are clicking, the car is bumping as we freestyle back and forth for an hour before we arrive at Donna's house. Groggy in the morning, I wake up and step into the lounge room to find all the guys dancing in the lounge room. And I mean dancing. There's a CD playing the local bongo flavor music on the stereo, and the guys are really getting down, yelling out for me to join in. There's a joyousness so fresh, almost naive, that I step beyond my jet lag and bust some moves. They turn up the music, we bounce around the lounge room, taking turns sharing the spotlight. Good morning, Africa. It turns out that we have to set up the studio now. So we get busy. We set up my bedroom. We get a desk from the lounge room, we prop it against the wall, we find a few chairs for the guys, I unpack my laptop, microphone, preamp, headphones that I bought in London on the way to the airport, and 1 hour later, we all step back and check out the studio with big grins on our faces. This is going to be fun. It turns out these guys have been together for 5 years. They're between 17 and 20 years old. They're all ex-street kids, the only ones alive from their family. Their brothers and sisters have passed, many from HIV. When it comes to the album we're going to record in the next 3 weeks, they know what they want, which is great. This one goes intro, first verse, bridge, chorus, second verse, bridge, chorus, outro, Maxwell says with authority. Great. Can you sing it for me? I'll make that beat, I say as I load up my sample bank of percussion sounds that I got in Brazil a few weeks ago. They rap the chorus. Nico says, it needs more energy. I bump up the tempo. How's that? We need bass, says Maxwell. I flick through my samples of jazz and Latin bass lines. The guys chat amongst themselves in Swahili. Nico says, that's good. We like what you're doing. You are listening to our ideas. Santi sana, I respond. No, thank you, says Maxwell with a laugh. Let's record, yeah? So over the next 3 weeks, we work real hard. Creating instrumentals, recording vocals, mixing and moving on. I don't go out that much, and I occasionally stare at a picture of Mount Kilimanjaro on my wall, and I think to myself, I've traveled all the way to Africa, and here I am, 45-minute drive from the Serengeti Plains, and I'm staring at a computer screen. After 3 weeks of recording, backyard press shots and shooting a video clip in a Maasai village, with the album is almost finished, we hit the town. Located right in front of the huge building that is the home of the UN Commission into Human Rights Abuses in Rwanda, a little cafe is hosting a reggae night. Last night, at a live reggae night, MCs converged from all points in Arusha. They ushered and rushed me out of the venue. When they found out I could beatbox, come show us. They led me to an excited cipher of MCs, and as soon as I started to show them, it was on. MC battalion attacked from the rear and the back, from up top, one from the very front, from the side. One guy climbed up on top of a table and rapped down from up high, whooping, clicking, yelling, breathing, MCs rhyming into each other's faces. The circle getting tighter and tighter, the rhythms building, voices louder, teeth, tongue, lungs, and hands push and compete to communicate. Sounds and thoughts splash like paint. Can you withstand the compression and deliver your confession? Elevate to let the energy of the congregation of celebrants, the smell of ganja and beer and accelerant, enter orbit, sending the whole spaceship into outer space. No petrol, no electricity, just the breath from our faces. A newly created universe defined in a few paces and bars, outside a bar, beneath the stars. In the cool African breeze, so fresh to connect with Swahili speaking MCs. Asante sana. Cool.
Again, I wish we're in the same room with people. So
thank you. Thank you.
Representation of 1,000 people that probably come up in the real world. Anyway, yeah, wow, that's amazing. I totally can feel, the energy through your words as well. It's so, they're just like, oh my God, I lost for words. But like, it's so rich. Like that experience is so rich.
Multi-layered,
Yeah.
Because that jam was happening in front of the UN Commission into Rwandan human rights abuses. So the terrible massacres that happened in Rwanda. By day, that was a cafe where there were lawyers from Senegal and Texas sitting there, casually talking to each other about whether or not this guy was guilty of a certain massacre. And by night, it's a reggae club. And that sort of juxtaposition of incredible brutality and civil war mixed with joyousness of music was very layered.
Wow, that's like, I really am, how you say, like touched, but not touched, like impressed by the contrast of the place itself. Like serious, and then like at night seems like when the reggae bar starts, everything just like, okay, let's put everything aside, let's just have fun and then like merge with the culture. Wow, that's impressive. And like this is like one of the memorable things. But I'm wondering, what was your most memorable thing that you learned through connecting with the community? Because you met so many, I believe. And then I believe like when connecting with community, because my work is also related to that.
Yeah.
Is, yeah, like you can totally learn from each community. And what is yours? What is your most memorable thing?
I do know in terms of vulnerability, there definitely have been a few moments where I've worked with, particularly I've worked with a lot of young people who in Australia, they call them at risk. So, you know, I had a workshop last week and it was through Zoom like this with a young man. And he turned up and he sat down and I said, "What happened to you?" He had a huge bump on his head. He said, "Well, I was beaten up 2 hours ago by a group of guys at school, but I'm here to do the workshop." And I'm like, whoa, you know, so it's, you know, that's just one example where music can be a really strong release and focus for people who are going through struggles in their life, whether you're rich or poor, black or white, wherever you are on the planet. Music and food, makan, will always bring you, you know, get you in a good place. And but I have been in places where I've seen, you know, been around some terrible instances of youth suicide and, you know, having to help young people who've had to deal with issues of, you know, abuse and things that have happened. And I'm there, I'm in that community, you know, whether it's in the desert or in the inner city, same sort of things can still happen. And then you go home and you just give thanks for what you do have and don't wish for any more, you know, generally, you know, yeah, it makes you reflect and put things in a context and be very grateful for what you do have, and to try and use that time to be in some way, I don't know, a facilitator, maybe an assistant to people to able to tell their own stories, because ultimately that's really what it is. It's storytelling, people telling stories. And if you can give people an opportunity to tell their stories, it can really change their sense of self-worth, and they can get proud and be stronger in who they are, because they may not always have the opportunity for someone like I do now to be listened to, and it gives you a sense of confidence and worth, self-worth. And so yeah, I find it's a great opportunity every time to work with any community. But I have seen some stuff, and I have taken time out as well over the years to pace myself so I don't burn out, because sometimes it can be really bloody heavy. There can be some really heavy stuff in jails and all sorts of places where they lock poor people up. You know, it's terrible. It can be sad and very confronting. So you have to try and take care of yourself, and I've taken time out and gone back to my own art and taken time off totally. And I guess we all need to do that and prioritize, take care of the little kiddies in your house that I can hear, and my little girl's upstairs. So, you know,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can imagine how that can be super heavy, and it's great that you aware of that and then taking time to avoid the burnout itself. And I totally agree with like how music can be such a powerful tool to escape from, you know, whatever heavy stuff that you're having. And you mentioned quite sometimes, a couple of times about your work, and I was saying that I'm gonna get back to that. So can you tell us more about the community, your community educational hip hop projects that I assume it's the work that you've been mentioning.
Mm. Oh, about it in general?
Yes. Yeah, in general.
Well, it's been an ongoing thing, and it's just happened for it's been going on for a long time, I suppose, 20 years, a bit over 20 years. And yeah, I've just been really lucky to have periods of time where I have traveled intensely, nationally and internationally, to connect and work with different communities. And I sort of got the idea for the book actually when I was at the Wood Writers Festival, and I saw William Dalrymple talking about one of his books, English author who writes a lot about the Raj in India. And he said travel writing is good because you don't have to be the best writer in the world, but it has to be fresh and real. And I thought, well, I can do that. I can do that. And I was very inspired by his talk and a few of the other talks at the Writers Festival. And that's when I went away and I went, that's it, I'm going to write a novel. I'm going to write a travel book. And I wrote down and I listed all these different, the chapters that go from A to B, go from Arnhem Land in Australia to Bali, to Berlin, to Bondi Beach, to Canada, to Holland, to jails, to studios, to Cape York. I really just looked at my book in terms of each chapter in the book is just the name of a location.
Right.
And I just talk about my experiences in that particular place. And then it's been interesting as I'm getting close to the end of it, seeing some common threads running through it here and there and how it's sort of tying together. But trying to see it, I think it might be a good time to put it out because no one can, we can't travel so much at the moment. Yeah. And so maybe we can travel vicariously through this book, Hip Hop is My Passport. Where do I want to go? Brazil, the Brazil chapter. Wow, what did Morganics witness in Brazil, in the hip hop clubs, on the street, in the samba schools, How did he end up recording a Javanese folk song just outside Ubud over a Miami-based hip hop song? How did these things come about? So I just wanted to sort of be a bit sort of as if you were sort of sitting on my shoulder and you're just coming along for the journey, and we go into all these different places, which I've been lucky enough to, have experiences in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Get you out of the lounge room, get you out of Zoom.
Yeah. I missed that. Looking forward to it. But aren't we all? Well, wow, that's been, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think I have one last question. It's about next. What is next? Are you going to do something different with the community? Where are you going to? And then how are you going to introduce hip hop to this new group of people?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions. That's sorry. But yes, what is next?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm currently mentoring a few young people through Zoom, at-risk young people who are using hip hop, and I'm setting up studios for them that are being bought, that they're setting up in their house, wherever they are, to record their own music, and I'm helping them do that, which is really good, and I think I can continue to do that from my lounge room here or my house. I'm finishing off a 20-minute short film, which is basically 7 songs which are recorded with a local hip-hop producer here in Cairns, which is the far north of Australia. We're right next to the Barrier Reef and the Daintree rainforest, ancient rainforest. There's strong Indigenous communities here, Kukuyalanji, Yidinji, and I've made a 20-minute sonic visual. So it's like a short film which tries to take people to here. And there's all this footage, drone footage and landscape footage. And it's been a really good experiment because it's not really so much about me rapping to the camera. It's more like the landscape speaking, because it's so lush and green and beautiful up here. And I'm really keen and excited to share that with people, because I think in this very, hard year for everyone, that it's nice to have something where you can just sort of sit back and just look at some beautiful nature and hear some really nice, jazzy, soulful hip-hop beats that my friend developed. He samples a lot of jazz from Japan, actually, that he's collected in Japan, and puts that together and makes beautiful hip-hop music. And then I've written the raps and poems as well that fit over those. So I'm finishing that off. That's sort of like, after doing hip-hop is my passport, which is up the world. This one is just 20 minutes of going into the jungle of far north Queensland with a hip-hop soundtrack. So I'm excited to share that soon and get the book out. And can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Your startup work, your community work.
Yeah.
I'll flip it on you. What sort of work? You've done a lot of different community work.
So we basically, my team and I, doing a lot of programs. If you familiar about accelerator or incubator to empower this different communities. Right now, the project that I'm involved in is in East Java in the waste sector community. So our focus is pretty unique because we're kind of like tapping into like the sectors or communities that is not, I would say, sexy, in quote, of course, because, when people talk about startup, they will think like, oh, like tech or like lifestyle, whatever. And then like it always focus on one specific group of people, which is like young people, for example, like millennials. And we were trying to not clone, but do the programs that most people do with this group of people, and then try to do it with to empower this another group of people, which is the community. Say like in East Java, we're doing the accelerator program for the waste sector community. That is mainly like middle-aged women. It's totally different group. And then and I, like how you mentioned about you need to listen, you need to like speak their language, you need to really be noticing like the characteristic on how to approach them. I can totally relate to that because like jumping from usually day-to-day meeting like these people who is like probably the same age like me, like the millennials era, and then jumping into like the group of people who is like my mom. So I'm like, okay, no, I think like using my mom's language probably works. And just there's a lot of like learnings as well. And it's really interesting to tap into like different communities and then to see like how one thing like for you is like hip hop can be brought to like different communities and the impact is like different. And so it just enrich the whole, well, in my work, I said sector, or maybe enrich like the ecosystem basically. So that's what we do. The community.
I think intergenerational work is vital for the success of any community work, and like what you're doing, I think it's really important to point out that there can be a trend even globally to be like, oh, we're going to teach everyone how to use a MacBook or whatever, and we're going to work with young people on TikTok. That's not the whole world, is it? So that's great. That sounds awesome.
And then like it just my team and I are just like be sensitive about stuff that we need to really take a step back and really really listen to like what they need to make the program impactful. And like we're really trying to be careful not to like coming in and then so like, oh, here we have the solution, whatever. But we sometimes the solution that we thought is different from the solution that in the ground is actually the things that they need. So like so power of community.
Yes, the danger of preempting.
Oh my god, it's so common. Yeah. Oh, well,
Right. Sounds
yeah,
fascinating.
that's fascinating. Yeah. And so I would
Luck.
I would be following your community work and really interested to hear more about it. And I feel like there's so much things that maybe stuff that you do can be also implement here in Bali, I would say, which I know some friends been doing like community empowerment work as well. And so it's going to be super interesting.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, before we finish off, you have rap. You said you want to rap in 15 languages, but
Yo.
limited time.
Okay.
So
Go quick.
challenge you to do
Okay.
it quickly. Okay.
A quick one. I want to give a shout out to my friend Reza, who's a fantastic drummer who lives in Ubud now.
Yeah,
Over there, I work together in a group, sort of hip hop Indonesian fusion group many years back in Sydney, Australia. Shout out to Reza. This one's for you. Ichi, ni, son, she, multilingual MC. Tula monke pala le hip hop, follow me. Now, kulera palia ua, drop it on you. Asik, terima kasih, sama. Boroburuto ulubruta egeti yorowa ki ora saying fat and samoa when I'm moving through. Tengo sangre de todo del mundo, somos una mezcla. SOS eating makan when I'm in Malaysia. Scheisse, das ist gut. Willkommen, never common, all unique. No shame job here. Celebrate the way you speak. Très bien when we send este mensaje por la gente. Shokran por tutta la bella musica de mi mente. Kapkun kapa, roe que penetesti chopti. Obrigado por el ritmo, por el music, por el MC. Abre sus ojos and you will see refugees. Come follow me, free yourself from the mental slavery, your penitentiary. Whatever your lingo, whatever your tongue, get it up and done it like a bomb. Spitting rainbow colors like a true blue tongue. Now, ichi, ni, son, she, multilingual MC. Tout le monde qui parle le hip hop, follow me. Ayo. Makasih.
Hey, again, I wish we're in the same room.
My bedroom goes crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well. Thank you so much for the conversation. It's so good. I learned so much by hearing from you. And I really look forward to your book. So, and also maybe like, is everything up online on your website that we can check?
Yeah. I've got a hip hop feature film called Survival Tactics. You can find that and some chapters of my book and video clips from different communities. My website is morganics.info, morganics.info, morganics.info. Please check it out. You can drop me a line and look forward to following some of your community work too. And thank you very much. And I'm just ready to absorb heaps of the festival because there's so many great writers. I'm just going to be sitting down and me and my partner are going to be listening and watching and absorbing. So yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who already coming and then watch this talk. We hope you enjoy it. And before we're closing out, I always just want to do a little shout out. Kembali 2020 was made possible with the support of the Yayasan Muda Saraswati Patron Program and their donors. The Patron Program was created to seek assistance for the survival for both festivals and the foundations. By making a valuable contribution to the Yayasan Patron Program, you will be directly involved in delivering both festivals in due time. Your contribution will guarantee the future of Indonesia's most meaningful cross-culture platform of words, ideas, culture, and the creative arts. Follow at Ubud Writers Festival on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or visit ubudwritersfestival.com for more information about the Patron Program. So yes, have a great day, everyone.